G'day, I'm Bruce, and in this video we're going to do some more work on this V12 two-stroke powered Wally Wabco truck. This truck's been sitting for about 20 years that we know of, and it's going to take a fair bit of work to try and get everything back working again, but we've done a number of different things to this truck. One of them was replace the hoses. A lot of hydraulic hoses have been replaced up under the front and at the back on the bin. We're just looking up underneath the front of the old Wally Wabco there now, and that was one of the hardest hoses to change, that delivery hose coming off the hydraulic pump. Then these other ones up on top here where the power steering box and that is, power steering hoses, they were quite easy to change. Both the hoses were done on the back here to work on the lift rams. This one was done on, this is on the left hand side, the one on the right hand side's also been done. We've got the sump back on there now, all the dents in the sump have been belted out and we've given it a coat of paint. Even put a little bit of black on the bolts to stop them going rusty, especially if this thing's going to be sitting for a long time not doing much work. So that's another job done. The next job was to tend to the strut on the truck. This big part here, it's like a big ram, but it's actually like a big strut. It has gas on top and oil on the bottom from what we can understand. And what happened, once we moved the truck, after it'd been sitting for that many years, all of a sudden the oil leaked out the bottom and the gas disappeared too. Once that does that, then you can hardly drive the truck, especially if the ground's wet, because once this side sags down, once the suspension sags down, then it just wants to spin the wheel on the opposite side. At the back will just spin. We thought, what's going on? But obviously once this goes down, the wheel at the back comes up. There's not much weight on it, so it's hard to get it to drive up a hill, especially if the ground's wet. So the next part of the story goes, we thought, oh, we've got it in here, we'll jack it up, and we'll take this valve out and just check it to see whether there's something wrong with the valve, whether gas has leaked out of the valve or whether it's just oil leaked out the bottom. So anyway, the next problem was to try and pull the valve out, this little tiny thing here. It screws in up the top here. If you look up here, this little piece goes up into here, like so. And of course you can't see what you're doing because that's recessed down probably about 25 mil. So it's very hard to see up on top because both the seats are in the way up the top. It's just a little tiny bit of room to see. So I thought, oh well, I'll undo it down here with a spanner. As I was undoing this part here, I'm thinking I'm unscrewing the valve, taking the valve out. That is like a unit. You can't take this piece out, but I didn't know that. So I just kept undoing this part, and of course I can't see what's going on because it's up in there, out of sight. And as I'm undoing that, next thing the valve drops down inside the cylinder. I thought, oh no, what have I done now? So now we've got to try and retrieve the valve from inside the strut. So you can see that's the unit. That's where it screws in. That I should have unscrewed this part here to take the whole unit out. I'm undoing it and I'm thinking, oh yeah, this thing's coming out quite okay. And the next thing I hear tinkle tinkle, and I thought, oh no, what's happened now? The valve's actually dropped down on top of the piston. I thought, oh, what do we do now? I had everything jacked up, probably about another 20 inches or half a metre higher than this. I had more blocks under there and had everything jacked up high. And then I thought, well, like the piston goes down then. If you jack this up, the piston inside the cylinder goes down. Anyway, I got one of my friends over with a camera on the end of a wire and a light. It's a pretty fancy looking outfit. He's got a little TV screen up here. So anyway, he had a look down inside while I had it jacked up and he could see it. He said, oh yeah, I can see it in there, okay. But anyway, he said, you want to let the truck down, then theoretically, well, the truck goes down and basically the piston's coming up, even though the piston's not coming up, but the outside's going down. So that means instead of looking down that far inside the thing, he's only got to look down that far. So that's where we're at now. It was very difficult to see anything because the seats are in the way. So that's where we are now. So I had to slowly let everything back down again. So I had to have a series of jacks here and go down a bit at a time. We've got a 12-ton jack here. We've got a 20-ton jack here. You can see there's a bit of, even that's got a bit of strain on them. So I try and jack them both up at one time or let them down bit by bit. So that's where we're back to now. We're back to where it's nearly right down. So the thing's probably only about that far down from the top now where the part's laying inside. As you can see now, the strut's nearly right down. As you can see, the size of the strut, the size of the parts on this truck are really big. It's about the right height now. That's what the other one's set at anyway. And apparently this unit has been changed before, the previous owner told us. If you go back and have a look at my earlier videos where we rescued the thing from the quarry, there is a video there on the inside of the truck and you'll be able to see there was a dicky seat sitting over here close to where I am there now. But anyway, there must have been about 50 years worth of dirt inside. So I've just about worn that vacuum cleaner out, sucking up all the dirt. and we want everything nice and clean in here so you can see the top of that strut. So if we go to do any work on it, we're not going to drop any dirt or rust or junk down inside the strut. The main seat is in the way there. When you look underneath there, there's a piece of steel that runs right across the top of that hole, which is part of the seat frame. So we'll have to try and get that seat out the way so we can get down there, and so the man with the camera can have a pretty good shot at getting down there. And he reckons he might have a little claw thing that might go on the end of the camera, so he may be able to grab it with that and try and pull it back out. It was also very dirty around here. There was leaves and sticks and dirt and everything. Everything was pretty bad, so you know, that would have been not cleaned in years. So all that's all cleaned out now, and everything looks a lot nicer clean, even though we can see a bit of rust. Here's the dicky seat here, so I'm going to pass it down to the cameraman, and then we'll try and work on the main seat and see if we can get it out the way. I'm just going to heat up these couple of blocks. There's a couple of blocks here where the back of the seat screws down into these two blocks. So I've removed all the old rags and any junk that could catch fire. Then I'm looking over in here and then I see this snake skin sitting up in here. And I'm thinking, well, that might catch fire. There's part of it. I don't know how far down it goes the other way. So it would have been a pretty fair snake, I'd reckon, when you look at that. That's only part of it. There's a bit more over a bit further there. So I'm glad he's well and truly moved on. There's a bit more up in here. I don't know where it goes to. Oh yeah, must have been a pretty fat snake. Yeah, it looks like it's got the most of it out of there. Yep, I imagined it'd burn. Right, I'm just going to heat this piece up. Give it a bit of this before it cools down. It's got one done. I'll put that out of the way so it doesn't blow up. People have commented on my channel, why do you always use WD-40? The main reason is it's got this metal straw. You can bend it and it will stay put. Whereas if you have a plastic one, a lot of times the other cans only come with a little straw that long. But you can get long ones, you can buy them separately that are probably about 150 mil long, like that. But they're stiff. And the other thing is when you get in an awkward spot with like that, like I can just bend that up like that, and it'll stay like that, so I can just spray up under there. Beauty. Want to bend it the other way, spray down there. Any angle, that is terrific. That is a really good idea, that. Whereas if you have the straw, and you have the straw, you've got to try and force it back into the nozzle. While you're doing that, it's half spitting and spraying out there while you're trying to shove this thing in so it'll stay in there. Next thing, you're in some real awkward spot where you're up around here like this, and the thing's, it's just dead straight. So it's dead straight like that, and you're trying to get up around in a corner. See that like that, you can't do it. This here, you can just bend that up like that. Spot on. The other thing is the straws. I find that if you just have a plastic straw and you're in that awkward spot and you're just trying to move it around a bit, next thing blows out. You've got to come right out, get down. My eyesight's probably not great. You've got to try and feed this thing back in there again. Whereas these, that piece never blows out. That's just a magic idea, that. Whoever invented that really had their thinking cap on. That is a really good idea. That's the main reason I use these WD-40 cans. It's that device that comes with the can. I'm still recovering from eye surgery, so the cameraman has volunteered to get the seat out for me. I'll get you to aim it up top, get it to suck a bit more in. I'll get the air and blow the bottom again. You want me to spray the bottom a bit too? See, once the compressed air can blow through, it blows all the rubbish out of the thread when you're working it backwards and forwards. It's a good trick, isn't it? That's got one out. The next one will be the hardest. This one's going to be a nightmare. Very difficult to get at, and the top of the head of the bolt is pretty well rusted off. Do you want me to hit it with the compressed air again? Well, here they are, the little fellas are out, those back two bolts. Some people would probably just cut them off and probably try and get them out later on. Then you've got to muck around with the easy out, so you've got to try and weld nuts on them to get them out. But the one on the hardest side, you can see, they're both exactly the same bolts. But this one here has rusted down that much. That one had a 1/2 inch socket on it. This one we had to belt a 12mm socket on it. So the cameraman was up above working the spanners, and I was down below with the blow lamp, heating them up, heating up like the little pads they've got welded on underneath with a thread in them, and they came out. The other problem was, it's always the way it goes, the one that was the hardest, that is the rustiest, most rusted, smallest one, is where you can't get at it. So we can't open the door up properly because we're up against the railing. That made it very difficult because he had to lay half across the seat and work upside down to get in there. Very difficult to get at. So we've had a win on those two. So it's a real patience game. You're better off just taking your time. Once you've got everything hot too, just mainly don't try and undo them immediately one way. Just try and work them backwards and forwards. Try and work your spanner backwards and forwards, and for a while you'll think nothing's happening. But if you keep doing that, just keep working it backwards and forwards, and the moment you feel them creak or move a bit, you should be right from then on. But you've still got to be patient and just keep working them backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. When you get around to there, take the spanner off and have another bite, get another spot and work it around there backwards and forwards, and eventually you'll get them. There's another little trick you can do too that I've found. If you can have someone working the spanners on the top side, and if you can get compressed air and get the nozzle underneath with compressed air and keep blowing compressed air on them as the other person's trying to undo them, the compressed air will actually get in there and blow the rust out of the threads. But the person on the top really needs eye protection on, because after a while, all of a sudden it'll go real free. The air will blow straight through and there'll be a cloud of dust and rust and everything coming out of the top. Well, if the man on the top hasn't got eye protection on, this rubbish will end up blowing up into his eyes. So, but the compressed air, you can even do it from the top down. If it's somewhere where you can only get them one way, if you can have the nozzle aimed in beside them like that, and just keep the air pressure on them, someone else trying to undo them, working backwards and forwards, eventually that will start to blow that rust and dirt out. Or in our case, we could only work from the bottom up. So I was on the bottom there with compressed air blowing on there continually, as much pressure as you can give it, because I had the armadillo. I had the armadillo on here, full face protection. And after a while, the cameraman, he could feel them starting to move a bit. And I said, well, if they're moving, we should be right. We should be able to get them undone. So that's the easy way to do them. The easiest way I know anyway, but there's probably people out there that probably got other ideas on how they can do them. So if you've got any other tricks, leave a comment. I'd be interested to know if there's any way easier than that to get them undone. Well, the cameraman got the seat undone at the top. You can see there's the holes here where it was bolted down. And it's really heavy, that seat. Way more than 50 kilos we reckon, even though it doesn't look it. And it's in a place where the gear stick's going to be in the way to try and lift it out. But if that rail wasn't there, we could open that door up and get in there easy. There'd be one bloke on either side. That would make it easier, but because it's got to be lifted up by one person on this side, we might just leave it there for the time being. And this is the part here where we're going to have to be working on. We just put the bung back in there. You can see there's a pretty good picture of the hole. It's not very big. We're going to have to try and get the magnet down inside there and see whether we can pick up what's down in there. Got to get rid of the dirt, rust off the end of it. Right, I'm on the top of the piston. The man with the camera said there were a couple of bolts on the top of the piston. I don't know whether the valve might even be brass or copper. If that's the case, the magnet will never get it. I imagine it's laying at the back of the piston, which is that side because the truck's facing uphill. No, nothing there. But I don't know exactly where it was resting either. The only other way we might be able to do something, which is a real long shot, is if we have the vacuum arrangement with a skinny hose going down there. But that'd be a miracle if you could get it like that. I imagine it's probably laying around the outside, or I would have possibly got it by now. No, nothing there. If it's in the middle, I would have got it by now, I think, so it must be off to the side. It's a pretty big piston too, so I don't know, I don't think I'm getting to the edge. I can feel those bolts, the magnet's grabbing the top of those steel bolts. I can feel them pretty easily. No, that's the first try. Well, I'm going to have to wait and get my friend back with the camera on the end of the little wire and see if he can see exactly where this valve's laying. And if he can't get it out with his setup, the next move is to try and suck it out with the vacuum arrangement. Put a thin hose on the vacuum arrangement. If he can tell me exactly what part of the piston it's laying on, it's probably laying over on the side, I'm thinking, I'll try and suck it out with the vacuum arrangement. So that's probably about all we can do at the moment. Here's the camera. So next up is to put the little end there down inside the hole and see if we can find the valve. There it is, you can see it laying in the corner. I've got some super glue here and a piece of wire, and I'm going to try and put the super glue on the end of the wire and see if I can put that down in through the hole beside the camera and super glue onto the end of the valve, then try and pull the valve back out the hole like that. I don't know whether it'll work or not, but here goes nothing. The camera does have a magnet on the end, but it won't pick it up, so we think the valve might be stainless steel. We managed to get it standing up to glue the wire to the end.
Uh-oh. Fell off.
Well, after a couple of hours, Damien finally got this part out with his camera and light on the end of the stick, and he put a piece of wire on, bent it at right angle bends, so the piece of wire was just in front of the camera and the light. After much probing around, he got it out. I'll just show you the exact part. The super glue trick didn't work, where he put a bit of super glue on the end of a brazing rod, and he put the brazing rod down and he touched it with a bit of super glue, but I think it was too oily, he couldn't get it that way. Then he thought, oh well, I'll try a magnet. So he put a magnet down, but obviously it looks like it's stainless steel, so a magnet wouldn't work. He got the wire on the end of the camera, I suppose you'd say, and I can't remember if he hooked into here or hooked into one of these little holes. And then of course you had to very carefully drag it out, and of course that's the size hole there that he had to get it out from, and this is how it came apart. It's got a flat side on there so it can't turn, and that goes in like that. And what was going on, it's got an O-ring on here too, as you can see. Now that little unit's up in the top of the strut, or what do you want to call it, the hydro air. So anyway, I kept on doing this, and I'm thinking I'm lifting the valve out. And as I keep going and going and going, I think, oh, the valve's going to come out soon. But of course, this is set down about that far down from the top, so I couldn't see what I was doing either. So as I keep on doing it, and the next thing, plonk, that fell down on the bottom. I heard that piece fall down inside. I thought, oh no, what have we done now? I've got it all jacked back up again now. This is the stuff I've mixed in with the oil that we put back in. It's called Blue Devil. It's supposed to be pretty good for sealing up rear mains. Well, it'll have to be pretty good if it fixes this seal, because it's leaking pretty badly. So anyway, we've mixed this up with about 10 litres of oil, and we put that back in through the top. So we'll probably put in about maybe another 8 litres, I guess. And I must thank Jay Paydirt for sending us over some information on what's inside here. Thanks very much, Jay Paydirt, for doing that. So the next thing we're going to do is put some more oil in and then let it back down. And once we let it back down, we hope the pressure will push the seal, will make the seal seal, if you know what I mean. We've also had this 7th hour feeler gauge, which is about as thin as I can, thin as I can put up in there. Once you go thinner than that, well, it's that weak it can't do anything anyway. And I've just tried to scrape and clean around the seal and then spray it with a brake clean at the same time. I know my friend Shane, he always reckon he's had leaking seals on earth moving machinery, and he's got in with something similar to that and scraped around and sprayed brake clean in. He said sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. This whole exercise might be pointless, but you don't know until you have a try whether it's going to work or not. Yeah, I'm just sucking the oil up with this syringe and putting it in through the top. It's a lot easier to work on with that seat out the way. We had to shift both seats out of the way too, because we couldn't do any good with just the small seat out, because the big seat, if you look at the base of that seat, that rib that runs along here was exactly right over top of that hole, which meant the seat had to be moved. And of course the bolts were pretty rusty, so that was a bit of work to get the bolts out without snapping them off. It had to be heated and tapped and whatever. Just have to keep trying and see what happens. Yeah, normally with a thing like this, they'll top it up with nitrogen gas. We don't know whether this is going to seal up or not, but I've got air pressure there now. It has still got a bit of a seep there, but we've got about 110 pound of air on top of the oil now. So I'm just going to let the jacks down so it's got even more pressure pushing down, which might force that seal inwards around that chrome part, which will hopefully make it seal up. Well, it's standing up pretty good now. There will have to be a fair bit of pressure on that seal now, trying to make it seal, we hope. Weight's off the jacks now. You can see that one's loose, this one's loose, that one's loose. So the weight is on the strut now, or with a hydro air, or air hydro, depending on which way you say it. Well, so far it's holding itself up under its own steam, so we'll just have to wait and see whether it's going to stop leaking completely or even slow down on what it is there now. The next move is I'm going to drain the oil in the transmission. It does look like it's got moisture in it, and I don't know whether moisture is coming from the radiator, where it has a transmission cooler in the bottom of the radiator, but there's no sign of any oil in the radiator, which is very weird. So unless there was some other moisture trapped somewhere else in the system that we didn't know about last time we drained it. I've seen worse oil, but I still think it has some moisture in it, so it should be drained. The problem I had with my eye, the first problem I had, I was actually undoing the blades on the mower, and they seemed to be on there tighter than normal. Maybe it was a while since they were undone. So it was late in the afternoon. I think I'd had a busy day at the time. Anyway, I'm having a fight with these mower blades, and I decided to put the spanner on back to front to what I normally do, which was the worst thing because that made it twice as hard. And it was getting pretty close to dark, and I was determined I was going to do some mowing on my ride-on mower. And the next thing I noticed, blood in my eye. And I thought, oh yeah. And then by this time it's pretty well dark. Mower has headlights on it, but pretty weak. So I'm out there mowing, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, can't see real well. Comes back up into the house, I could hardly see it all through this eye, just blood. So I goes to the optometrist, and he says, oh yeah, oh well, you've had bleeding in your eye. I said, oh yeah. I said, what's the go with that? He said, oh well, you just have to wait and your body will absorb the blood. So this is okay. So I'm working on this pipe, underground pipe. I have a fellow there digging a trench, and I thought, right, I'll get down, I'll put this polythene pipe down into this trench. And of course, when you've got earth moving gear and everything's happening, well, most people's blood pressure goes up a little bit because you're stressing about, oh yeah, will this turn out okay, or what should I do? So I'm reaching down in the trench, and the next thing I see is these lines of blood coming down, thin lines. I thought, oh no, and I stopped immediately, and it stopped. And I thought, oh well, I'm okay. So back to the optometrist again, and he says, look, there's nothing you can do about it. He said, a certain amount of people do have this problem. So a bit of time goes by, my vision starts to become a bit better, and I'm thinking, I hope it gets right. So then the story goes, probably about a month later, I'm working on this bobcat, trying to pump grease into these bucket pins. So I've got a lever action grease gun, and I'm really trying as hard as I possibly can. And the grease isn't going in very fast at all. I should have just pulled the grease nipple out, cleaned the holes out from the inside with a screwdriver or whatever, put some brake clean or something in there and done it like that, but I didn't. So anyway, I left that job. It comes back home pretty late in the afternoon, and the next thing, we opens up a screen door in our house that we hardly ever open up. There's a frog squeaking in the top. So right, it goes out, and it was a pretty big glass door, glass all the way down. I lifts it out, and I was really straining to do that. Anyway, got the frog out and everything. The frog wasn't hurt. Put the door back, and I thought, right, we'll take the dog for a walk down in the park. I can remember it was a Sunday afternoon. So we're down the park, and I'm walking along, and the next thing, just streams of blood coming down into my vision. I thought, oh, this is terrible. By the time I thought, oh, well, we'll just walk a little bit further. By the time I got back to my car and started to drive, I said to my wife, this is terrible. I've lost all the vision in that eye. So back to the optometrist again. He said, you'll have to go down and have an ultrasound done on that because we can't look into the back of your eye. There's that much blood. So goes to this other town, other city. They run the ultrasound thing around. And they said, well, it looks like you haven't got a detached retina, and we'll keep an eye on you. We'll just have to wait and see what happens, whether that's going to, your body should absorb that blood, but of course nothing much happened for a while, and probably about, all these sort of things all happened probably about a month apart. And then it wasn't too long after that, probably, I'll say it might have only been a week, 2 weeks, and I'm out there doing this raking. Anyway, I've got a metal rake, some people call it a nail rake, and the ground's pretty hard where this excavator had been working, and I thought I'll just rake this ground back level. Anyway, I'm jarring on the ground, the ground was packed down a bit, and the next thing, this black, like a black ball, starts to come across my vision like that, and I thought, what is that? And that was a detached retina, and I thought, oh, this is just terrible. So when I went to bed that night, pitch black, in a pitch black room, no light on, it's like lightning flashes going off in your eyes, just shocking, just terrible. I thought, I'm never going to get to sleep like this. This is just shocking. What am I going to do? So the next morning, ring up the eye people in this other town. They say, you better get down, see an optometrist in your town immediately. This could be serious. You've got a detached retina. You're going to have to get that fixed pretty soon, or you could lose your sight forever. So it goes and rings around, gets my wife to drive me down to this optometrist. They have a bit of a look. They write a report for the other crowd in the other city. The other people said, you better get down here straight away. So my wife drives me down. We're down there. It's getting probably, I don't know, probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And the boss that ran this optometrist shop, he said to me, how do you feel about going to Brisbane? It's the capital city in Queensland. I said, I'm not keen on that idea, because I said, big cities are not for me. I'll have trouble finding my way around, and, I don't really want to be down there fighting with traffic jams and not knowing where to park. So he said, all right, just wait a bit. So he rings up the hospital, and there was a surgeon there from Brisbane with his own anaesthetist. And they said, look, it's not looking good for you, because the anaesthetist is booked on an earlier flight back to Brisbane. And I said, oh, that's terrible. I'm going to miss out then. He said, look, we'll just see what we can do. So he made some more phone calls, and he said, they've got her booked on a later flight. I said, good. He said, how quickly can you get across to the hospital? I said, how far is it from here? He said, I could run there in a couple of minutes. I said, you just tell us where to go. So we jumped in our car, and we didn't have far to drive. Got out, gets in there pretty quickly. They said, oh, are you Bruce? I said, yep. Anyway, they raced me through. Another woman said, you must be Bruce. Yep, they're all waiting for me. Straight into the room. They said, righto then, up on the table. And of course, everybody's already dressed in their gowns and everything. So they lasered my retina back on. So anyway, I had a patch on my eye, and they said, we want you back here in the morning about 8:30, and we're going to check what happened. So gets back down there in the morning again, and the surgeon was still there. The anaesthetist must have went back to Brisbane. So he lifts the patch off, and he has a look around, and he said, I think you'll be right. I think you'll be right. So that was done. So probably about a year went by, and he said to me, when he did the checkup, he said, look, your eye will probably improve slightly for a year, and then it'll go downhill. And apparently they put in a gas, and the gas must cause you to have like a cataract in your eye. Anyway, as time went by, it did improve a bit, but car headlights looked like a big star. House lights or anything from a distance looked like just like a big star. So I thought, oh, this is terrible, my vision's that bad. And it got that bad in the end. Both eyes seemed to go downhill pretty quickly. And I goes back to the optometrist, and he said, you didn't do too well on the test, on the letters and whatever. And I said, no, I know that. And he said, are you wearing glasses when you're driving? I said, I haven't been, but I haven't been driving very much. He said, have you got glasses? I said, yeah, I have got glasses for driving, but I just haven't been using them. And he was a really nice man, and he said, well, are you struggling to see? I said, yes, I am. Book me in. Book me in, I'll have cataract surgery or whatever I need. So I was lucky. Someone had dropped out, and there was a vacant spot for me first thing in the morning. I only had to wait about a month. So back down I goes, and the surgeon only turns up in this town, from what I can gather, about once a month from Brisbane. So I gets back down there again, and everything's action stations, and I was the first up in the morning and did the work on me or whatever. And of course they say that you're not fully knocked out, even though I can't remember anything. They reckon you're sort of in the twilight zone. So goes home, everything's pretty good. I've got the patch on. They said, we want you back here first thing in the morning, and we're going to pull that patch off and have a look. So I gets back down there, and the nurse pulls the patch off, and she said, have a look at the chart. Can you read the chart? I said, yep, I read the first chart. She said, can you read the second chart? I said, yep. That's with my right eye, which was the one that was worked on. Yep, read the second chart. She said, you're doing pretty well. Can you read the third chart? And I read the third chart down to the last line. I couldn't read the last line. She said, oh, you've got pretty good vision. I said, yeah, the sky's so blue. The grass is so green. And I thought, I can't believe how well I can see. I'll have to get my other eye done now. So anyway, I thought nighttime will be the test. When I look up at the moon, especially if it was a new moon where it's thin, I'd see about 6 moons all tucked in one behind the other. So anyway, car headlights and whatever. That night I got out and I had a bit of a look around at the stars. Yep, I can just see a little dot there rather than a star. So as time went by, I thought, this is just so good. I've got my vision back. So anyway, so far I'm doing really well. My vision might have dropped back just a little bit in this eye to what it was, but still really good. So I'm supposed to go back on Wednesday, and they're going to have a bit more of a look at me. And I think I'll try and book in and have my other eye done too. So that's the story. And I would also like to thank all the well wishers and all the people that left a comment saying that they hoped my eye surgery would turn out okay. And thank you very much for all those people that were thinking of me. Thank you very much again. I'm just going to have to still take it steady for a while. And one of the things they say is don't bend over. And I must admit, every time I had an eye bleed, I had been bending over. So that must increase the pressure in your eyes. The other thing, just another little comment about, there's got to be other people out there around about my age. The cataract surgery is well worth getting done. And the other thing I meant to say is when they put the gas in my eye, I had to sleep a certain way, and I think it was helium gas. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. And the idea is the helium gas is supposed to help push your retina back. So I had to sleep on an angle for about, I don't know, it was about 3 weeks, which was fairly difficult to sleep in a certain position to try and get the gas to push my retina back into place. And even at the daytime, they wanted me to lie across a bed and look at the computer. So I had to be flat on my belly, looking at the computer to try and push my retina back into place. So that was just another part of what I had to do. This was earlier on when I had the, like the sequence of eye bleeds and then the detached retina. And they say you should get something done about it. If anybody else there cops the same thing that I copped, where you've got that black, like a black ball coming across your sight, try and get something done about it immediately. It's funny how things go. Last night, word got through to me that this fellow on this property had 3 tractors all bogged, and would I like to go out there and get a dozer and tow these 3 tractors out? And the cameraman said, well, it'd be nice to do that, but at the moment you just better steady up a bit. There are plenty of videos out there. There's a multitude of stuff I could be going out and doing a story on, but I'm just going to have to take it steady for a while, and any of that heavy lifting or any of that hard stuff, I'm just going to have to tick along pretty steady for a while, I'd say. Thank you to everybody that wished me well, and that's probably about all for this video. So until next time, thanks very much for watching.